So once again, Ms. Nicole Robinson, she is up next. She was a resident for Allen Parish. She served her residency at Oakdale Middle School. Her mentor teacher was Miss Angela Smith. She is pursuing her certification in math. And also, we're glad to know that Miss Nicole will also be teaching at her residency school this coming fall. So, Miss Nicole Robinson, the floor is yours. Go ahead and start with your presentation. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I'm not feeling that well today, but I'm going to get through this presentation because I'm excited about it. So, give me 1 second to make sure. Okay, can you guys see the screen? Yes, okay. All right, so like Ms. Cowley said, my name is Nicole Robinson, and I did do my residency at Allen Parish. Okay, so my presentation is on the Amazon Fire tablets. I did not get a chance to do this lesson in class due to COVID-19, but this class that I'm going to highlight, they did get a chance to use the Amazon tablets when we were working with GeoGebra, and they really enjoyed it. So I wanted to implement it again when possible. So I was able to implement it during linear functions. So this class, the total student size was 24 students. There's 12 girls, 12 boys. There were no students in this class that required any type of accommodations or modifications. Everyone in this class also scored either mastery or advance on their LEAP for math in 7th grade. The students were placed in their four-person groups for this lesson, and they did have opportunities throughout the lesson to work individually with their partner or with their four-person group. Let's see. So what do they, I gotta make this a little bit smaller. Okay, what do they know? So students have learned about the concept of a function and why they're important. They learn functions. We really have them anytime you have an unknown variable, you can input it in, like when working with, I gave them an example because I had 8th grade students, so they were always worried about money. So we work with examples with functions. When you work a certain amount of time, you get paid for that time, stuff like that. So on this screen here, you'll see the different types of functions. So most people only think about functions with the linear functions, but there are other types. So on the top row, you can see the type of functions here, and then these are not functions, okay? So also, what do they need to know? What a function actually is. So a function is basically each input is assigned one and only one output. So what that means, our inputs are our x's here, and our outputs are our y's. So as you can see under a function, each of these are only assigned one output. Over here for not a function, each of these are supposed to be only assigned one output, but as you can see, one is assigned 2, and it's also assigned 5, so they've learned that that determines that it's not a function, okay? What else do they need to know? Here on this screen, we're talking about graphing linear functions, so they're learning how to plot the points here, how to determine their x and y intercepts, and our slope intercept. Okay, so they're going to use all of this knowledge that they've learned to go ahead and determine how we can interpret the equation y equals mx plus b as defining a linear function. So success for this lesson is when the students can determine a linear function given a verbal description of a linear relationship between two quantities. And you'll be able to see an example of that on the next screen. Students will also be able to interpret linear functions based on the context of a problem, and they'll be able to graph linear functions using a table of values, plotting the points, and drawing a line. So for this lesson, the first activity, there are 2 scenarios that would be presented to the class. So like I said, I wasn't able to teach this lesson, but I'm still gonna teach it to you guys, I guess. So we'll read through the scenarios as a class. So where my cursor is now, this is Aleph, a graph of Aleph's running. And it stated that he was running at a constant rate on a flat paved road. And then here was Shannon, and she was running on a rocky trail. So as I said, for success in this lesson, students would have to be able to describe in their own words, like a verbal description of what's going on. So for this, they would have 1.5 minutes to complete these exercises where they would describe in their own words what's going on. And then afterwards, they're going to be given 30 seconds to use Think, Pair, Share, which is one of the Kagan strategies that I love, with their partners. So they'll, hopefully they would both determine that this was a linear function based on the constant paved road that he was running on. And then here we had Shannon, which is obvious this was not at a constant rate, so it wasn't going to be a function. So another activity students will have, and this will be the activity that they will be able to use the Amazon tablets with. So students will have 2 minutes to complete the exercises independently. They're going to be given a table, so just a T-chart with, they're already going to have the coordinates for the graph. So what they're going to do is they're going to have to determine the standard form, the y equals mx plus b, from the T-chart. So they're given 45 seconds to use turn and talk with their partners. They'll compare their answers, and then they're going to go to the tablets for this portion of the lesson so that they can verify their linear functions through the Desmos app. Desmos is also a website that you can go to, as well as GeoGebra, but these are the things that I've used the Amazon tablet for this year. So let's go here. So like I said, students will be asked to first develop a linear function based on the T-chart they're given. So I'm going to show a little bit of a video. I'm going to fast forward towards the end so you can just see what's actually being created.
So students will be required to go ahead and plug in the equation that they come up with from their T-chart into the Desmos app or website on their Amazon tablet. So I'll go ahead and work through this one so we can see what we come up with.
Towards
so
the end.
My slope, which is M, I determined that was 3. Okay, and then B, I just solved
I'm sure
and
y'all
found
don't
out
want to see
that
all of that
was
written workout.
5.
So
okay.
now they're going to have the opportunity
Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and
to plug in the
the
equation. So this next slide, okay, sorry you guys, moving too fast, is actually going to show me utilizing the app. My son was supposed to do it, but he went out of town, so I had to do it myself. You can see him over here holding the Amazon tablet as he worked out the problem. So here, after the students figured out the form y equals mx plus b, their slope-intercept form, they were going to use the Desmos app to verify that their linear function was correct, that they derived from the T-chart. So I'll let you guys go ahead and watch the video.
All right, so now that we have created our equation from the T-chart, it's time for the students to go ahead and input into their tablet. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the y equals 3x, okay, plus 5. So as we can see, it's charted a line now. So what this app is telling us is that these points will correspond with what the students have on the T-charts they were given. So they just had to figure out what the linear equation was, and once they did, this is what they were able to come up with. So I would like to verify, and I'll just refresh you guys with the chart that they were given. So we have 0 and 5, 1 and 8, 2, 11, and 3 and 14. So I just want to verify that they did come up with the correct equation. I'm talking too fast. So I think the first one I had was 0 and 5. So we can see that that is accurate. If you look here, 0 and 5 is a point on this line. The next was 1 and 8. So I guess I close that over so I'll have more space. So let's look at 1 and 8. So if we look, there we go. Now we have 1 showing. And you can see 1 and 8 is there, right there. I guess I'll get a pencil and show 1 and 8. The next one we have is 2 and 11. So, and another way that they can check. So we had 1 and 8 right here. So if I went up, because my slope was 3, or 3 over 1, if I go up from 8, 1, 2, 3, and over 1, I'll have my next point, which does verify our next one, which is 2 and 11. And then the last point that we have, or coordinate, I'm sorry, was 3 and 14. So as you can see, we have our 3 down here and 14 here. And that is the next coordinate on there. So we were able to verify 2 different ways. So we can use the slope, or we can just verify that our T-chart. But this gives the kids a visual representation of the graph that they can see and move around and just play around with to get more comfortable with functions and graphing. And that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video.
Okay, so for my reflection assumptions, students in this class, they've already had experience with the Desmos app. Like I told you guys before, we used it for GeoGebra, which is really excellent. I'm actually going into 6th grade math next year, so I won't be able to really get into GeoGebra like I did this year with 8th grade math. But for those that are doing 8th grade, it's excellent. For translations, rotations, and reflections, all of that. It's dilations, all of them. It's really, really good. So, and I was able to use the Amazon tablets as well as the Chromebooks with that. So I've noticed that when using the Amazon tablets, my students seem to really grasp the concept of the lesson that I'm teaching better. A lot of the students in that class were visual learners, so they wanted to see it, you know, and that was the opportunity that I had to use the tablets. I'm gonna go ahead and play this video of my son. He did get to work through this lesson, and so I just asked him a little bit of feedback for you guys to hear what an 8th grader would say, because he was one of my students this year.
I was given a T-chart and asked to create a linear function based off of the points. And having access to an Amazon Fire tablet, I was able to get on Desmos.
I'm gonna start it over. His voice is so deep, you guys. I'm sorry.
I was given a T-chart and asked to create a linear function based off of the points. And having access to an Amazon Fire tablet, I was able to get on Desmos and find the points because I'm a visual learner.
So do you think that the Amazon Fire tablet is beneficial in the classroom, or very beneficial? Thank you, Isaiah.
So he was really excited that he was going to be in my presentation. So, okay, so let's go on to the assessment part. So students will be provided an exit ticket at the end of this lesson. And I also have a chart on the wall where they can put sticky notes. So sometimes students, when they don't understand, they get a little nervous and don't want to speak up. So it's like a self reflection poster, and they just write down, each person is given a sticky note every day in class, and they put it on their table for at the end. So if they have a question or anything that maybe they were afraid to say, they have to just write their name and the question on it, and they just put the sticky note on the board. And then I review those as well as my exit tickets, which helps me better assess where my students are. So success of this lesson will be determined when they can provide the verbal description, like in the first activity with Alaf and Shannon. Also, being able to develop the linear relationships between the functions is so important so that they can see the difference. Graphing the functions by constructing a T-chart So in some of the examples, they were given a T-chart, and then they had to figure out the slope-intercept form so that they can graph it, and then they were able to verify it on the Amazon tablets. Students will complete an assessment covering all the standards addressed in this topic. You can see the standards listed below here. The assessment will include multiple choice, true, false, matching, fill in the blank, and short answer. That is the end of my presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, y'all are so quiet. It's like the students. At least I see y'all smiling and laughing. My students just look at me with blank faces, so. Anybody?
Nicole, tell us why you think the technology you used was such a key to the student success and learning.
My students really like technology. So that was one thing they really enjoyed about me being in the classroom. My mentor teachers, she's old school, and she tells them, like, technology is not my thing. So when I came in the classroom, and she had a smart board that she never used before, and I was like, we have a smart TV, like, we have to use this. The kids were so excited. So anytime, like, I was leading a lesson and they found out, they were like, Ms. Nicole, so what technology are we using? So I know that it was a way that engaged them more. They were more into the lesson. Math is, sometimes it can be hard to grasp. So, I mean, this is my first year in education. I came from being a police officer, and jumping into math was an eye opener. So I knew teaching my students what it kind of felt like coming into this and not really knowing, because I was learning this as I went along as well. And so I was trying to find any way that I can incorporate technology, because I mean, middle school students, I mean, they have phones. None of my kids have phones. I don't allow it, but kids, they have phones, they have tablets, they have, I mean, you see 1-year-olds with tablets. And so it's obvious that technology in the classroom is a necessity and it's essential. Things have changed. So when I was in school, technology wasn't really prevalent, but now it's definitely a necessity. And I feel like if you're not incorporating technology in the classroom, you're really not able to engage all of your students on the level that we need. They're more prone to deepen their thinking skills when you're giving them something where they can get into it and they're like, oh, well, yeah. And then they start getting ideas. And like, I actually asked them, I was like, hey, you guys, what are some educational sites that we can incorporate in the classroom? And so I had asked them that right before COVID-19, because I was going to start my 2-week plan. And so I wanted to see if they could think of some stuff too that they might want to see in the lesson. So, I mean, the Amazon tablets were amazing, the Chromebooks. I did not get a chance to use the Lego robots, but I'm going into 6th grade, and Randy was talking about her lessons in 6th grade. So I'm going to get with you, Randy, so I can figure out ways, because I don't know the curriculum, you know, the topics in 6th grade yet. So I'm going to have to see where I can incorporate it. But I know I'm definitely going to incorporate Legos in 6th grade, Amazon, and the Amazon Fire tablets, and my Chromebooks. So I'm excited. And the technology course that we're taking now is really getting me excited going into my first year of teaching, because I'm like, oh, I have other ways that I can incorporate technology. It's not just, you know, this one track that I thought. Like before, I was like, oh, Chromebooks. Yes, I can use Chromebooks in the classroom. But now it's like we have all of these other avenues. So technology is important. It is.
Tell me this, Nicole, how do you think you may be better prepared going in a classroom when you've been side by side with your mentor teacher for almost a full school year? I know with COVID, you guys were cut short at second semester midterm, but tell me how you think you may or may not be ahead of the game or prepared. Tell me how you think it's maybe helped you.
Oh, I absolutely know it has helped me. So, like I said before, you guys, I was a police officer and detective for 10 years. So, coming into this program was literally the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I was like, it was literally all my prayers were answered because I knew I wanted to go into education, but I knew nothing about this field. I knew nothing about being a teacher. I literally, when I did my interview, I said, you guys, I am a police officer through and through. I said, one thing I know I won't have a problem with is classroom management. I said, because I know how to control a situation. I said, but when I got in the classroom, like that's not all it's about. It's so much more. So having her beside me and my mentor teacher, Miss Angela Smith, was absolutely amazing. She was so instrumental in my growth this year. When I first walked in, like I was almost afraid to teach my first lesson, especially to the class that I was just talking to you guys about, my mastery and advanced students. I'm like, oh man, they know way more about math than I do. I'm not too excited about it. But with her beside me and just helping me along the way, I mean, we talk about letting our students have productive struggles. She did let me have productive struggles uh, as a resident teacher. She allowed me to work through those things. Sometimes I would look at her like, she's like, you know what to do. And so that gave me the confidence that I needed. The person I walked into the classroom as in August of 2019 is not who I walked out of the classroom as in March of 2020. Like, I'm so much more confident. I know that this is definitely the place that God put me. This is my passion, teaching. So this program, my mentor teacher, having that year, because a lot of people talk about, you know, when they did their internship or student intern, they maybe went into class like 3 or 4 times. I'm like, how can you be, you know, confident in what you're doing? Like, I would be totally lost in the classroom. I feel like this program is essential. All teachers need to go through a CLIP program like this. It has been very, very awesome. I can't brag about it enough. My mentor teacher, she calls us our math twins, because she's like, we're gonna math all day, every day. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So now I'm like a lover of math now. So it was great. It was great for me. My experience may not be like everyone else's, but I had an amazing time. My host school, Oakdale Middle, was amazing. Allen Parish School Board, the people there were amazing. Like, everyone was on the same page. Like, we want you to be successful, so let us know whatever you need. And they really did come through. Some people say that and they don't follow through, but I can say that Oakdale Middle School and Allen Parish, they followed through on ensuring that I was ready, and I'm going into the next school year ready.
Nicole, you bring such a positive vibe, such a positive atmosphere with you, and those kids they're going to be great. When I would stop by your classroom, I mean, like you said, you were using your technology. You had
Yes.
ones that math isn't my thing. I mean, you would explain everything in detail. You would use all the technology in the classroom. So for that, I'm very proud of you. Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Nicole, I just want to say how much more confident you sound today, okay, than when we started. I think
Yes.
that you have gone over the hump. Okay,
Yes.
technology is here to help me, not to hinder my progress, and I can do this. So kudos to you. Awesome work.
Thank you. Yes, it was very different for me because I'm not really like social media savvy, so I don't really get into technology as much. But when I saw how beneficial it was in the classroom, I couldn't help but like, I want my kids to be the best that they can be. And I know that this is an avenue that they like, so I'm going to incorporate it wherever I can, however I can. Hi, Miss George. So one of the people I was telling y'all about, Allen Parish, Miss George is on the line. I was bragging about you guys and how helpful and instrumental y'all have been in my growth this year.
Well, you actually made it quite easy to do. Like, you were very welcoming of any support, any feedback. So it was very easy to support you. So I'm glad that you actually had such a great experience.
Thank you.
Miss George, I'm so sorry. We're ahead of schedule, so we're just moving right through. And I saw that you came in about the time Nicole was scheduled to present, so I apologize for that. But she did a great presentation, and we are recording. So once I have that, have it completed and downloaded, I'll be more than happy to share it with you so you can see her full presentation. Okay.
Yes, please do. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. So our next presentation presenter is Ms. Venus Neers. Ms. Venus is a resident at Winn Parish, and she has served her residency at Winfield Middle. Her mentor teacher is Ms. Delita Jones, and she will be discussing today linear equations using the Kindle Fire. So go ahead, Ms. Venus, whenever you're ready, you go ahead and share your screen and get started.
Okay, hello everyone. As Ms. Jennifer stated earlier, I am Venus Neers, and I was a resident at Winfield Middle School in Winn Parish. My mentor teacher was Delita Jones, and we taught 7th and 8th grade math. I think also that I've grown by leaps and bounds under mentorship of Ms. Jones. We had a standing appointment after at the end of the day after all the classes, and we reflected on the lessons, and we talked about what I could have done better, and I always incorporated that into my next lesson. So she's taught me a lot. All right, in our classroom, we taught 7th and 8th grade students, but the lesson that I'm going to incorporate today with technology is for the 8th grade students. So in those two classes, we had about 28 students, 26 students. The classes were very small. We had a inclusive class, so we had a mix of regular education students and SPED students. The makeup of the class included one student who was diabetic, so he had to leave early, about 10 minutes early from class every day. We had about 2 students who were diagnosed with ADHD, and we had 3 students that required us to have read alouds. We had to read the text to them. Okay, so the lesson is graphing linear equations. So in preparation for the class, students had to have prior knowledge about unit rates and proportional relationships. So since we had a mixture of students, we kind of scaffolded the lesson. We included what we would be working on in like the bell ringers and enrichment to help students build up their prior knowledge for this lesson. Okay, for informal assessments, I would walk around and monitor the class. Students would ask any questions during the lecture and during the exercises that we did during the class. So if they had any questions or were unclear on something, then they could ask. They can ask their neighbor, or they can ask the teacher as I walked around and monitored. I wasn't able to actually incorporate this technology in the lesson because of the school closures and COVID-19. So this is just how I imagined that the lesson would be as I incorporated it in the 8th grade class. Okay, so at the end of each lesson, as a formal assessment, we had exit tickets at the end of each lesson. So the exit tickets let us know how much of the lesson that the students grasped. And if they were struggling in areas, we did a review the next day to help clear up some of those misconceptions. Okay. So the standards addressed for this lesson were 6.rp.a.3 using ratios and rate reasoning to solve real world math problems, and standard 8.ee.c.8a understanding solutions to linear equations. The technology that I incorporated in this lesson was with the Kindle Fire. The app that we used on the Kindle Fire was called the Linear Explorer app, and that app is used to graph 2 points on a coordinate plane. So I noticed that students were having a lot of difficulty graphing their lines and properly solving their equations. So using this Linear Explorer app, I felt that this is a way for them to verify their work. So the students would actually do the work on their own and then put in their coordinates into the Linear Explorer app. Okay, so once they put it into the app, then they were able to see if what they did on their paper was correct, where they made their mistake, and make the proper adjustment. Okay, so to make the transition smooth for getting into the groups and using the technology, I had to verify the steps in order to make sure that the app actually worked for what we needed it to work for. Okay, so in the class, students were seated 2 by 2. So when it was time to get into their groups, all the students had to do was the first row would turn around to the second row and they would automatically be in their groups of 4. So what you're seeing on your screen now is an example of the handout that the students would have in their groups. The students wouldn't be required to work every single problem. Each group would have the first 2 problems, and then the second group, the next 2 problems, and so forth. So as you see on your screen, it gives an equation for the students to work. So the students would find their coordinates, graph their points on the coordinate plane, determine what their slope is and what the y-intercept is. So all these items can be checked by using the Linear Explorer app that you'll see in just a minute. Okay, so here is the steps that I would have to do in order to get the technology ready for the students to work with. So I would already have to have the QR code that the students would have to scan in order to use the Linear Explorer app. So I'm just going to play this video so you can see the steps I would have to do to have that QR code ready for the students. Okay, so I first clicked on Create Apps. And since I've been in here before, you see that Linear Explorer is already in my projects. So I click on Linear Explorer. Okay, so that screen that you're seeing there is what the students will see on their Kindle Fires. All right. All right, so here is where I will have the QR code already uploaded on the smart board, ready for the students to scan when it was time to get into their group. Okay, and if the students were having issues scanning, they could also just type that code in, that FRVJDX, if they were having trouble scanning with their Kindle Fire. All right, and on this screen, you see what the students will be seeing on their Kindle Fire. So when it was time to use the technology, the students will open up the app, which is an MIT app, and they will automatically see this screen come up on their Kindle Fire. All right, so the students would click the blue tab, which says Scan QR Code. They would scan it from the smart board where the QR code was projected. and then they will connect with the code. Okay, so I'm just going to play this little clip. Okay. So they scan the QR code here, click connect with code. All right, and this screen comes up. So you see that the screen looks exactly like the example of where I had to go through the steps to project the QR code. So the students will have to plot at least 2 points on their handout to make their line. So if we started with the first point, which is the red dot, these red buttons here control the coordinates for that red point here. So the buttons that are pointing left to right will help you find the X value for the red point. And then the buttons that go up and down control the Y value. Okay, so after the students did the work on paper, they would input their X and Y values. Okay, so that's the students will be pressing the buttons to find their X and Y value. So if their X value was 7, they hit the left and right buttons till they got to 7. If their Y value was 5, they will hit the up and down arrows here until they got to 5. Okay, so for their second point, I'm just going to say that the yellow point is the second point. They will use these set of buttons to find their X and Y value. Okay, and if you see here in quadrant 2, it also gives you the slope, which is a part of their assignment. It gives you the slope and the y-intercept, so they can also check to make sure they got those correct. Okay, so after the student is done, they just can hit the reset button and pass it to the next group member. So in their groups of 4, they will only have one Kindle. So they will actually do the work first, and then they will be able to check their work and verify that it was done correctly. Okay. All right, 3 factors necessary to make the lesson successful. All right, students need to have prior knowledge of unit rates and proportional relationships. And if some students struggle, which we had that from time to time, we would do some enrichment and we will include it in our bell ringer at the beginning of class. All right, the lesson objective needs to be stated clearly. So before each lesson, we always wrote the objective on the board. So the students will copy that objective into their notes and then take notes as we completed the lecture on that lesson. And classroom management must be incorporated. So we often get into groups to do different lessons. So the students know that, like I said before, the first row of students always turn around to the second row and they're automatically in their group. Okay, so for this lesson, graphing linear equations, the objective was students predict the shape of a graph of a linear equation by finding and plotting solutions on a coordinate plane. The students were expected to plot at least 2 points on the coordinate plane using a linear equation. And for classroom management, students, of course, raise their hands to ask questions. Students are seated near their group members, so it makes it easier for them to get into their groups in a minimal amount of time. And students have an allotted time to remain in their groups. So the portion where the students are working the actual problem, they're given a time limit to work that problem, and then they're given time to actually check the work they've done. Okay. And as I reflected on the lesson, like I said, I wasn't able to actually incorporate this technology into the lesson, but definitely preparation is key in order for this to work smoothly. And students will need to know how to make their transitions into their groups. So in order to prepare for the lesson, I had to download the app. I had to have the QR code ready before the lesson so the students would have it available to scan. All right. And in groups of 4, each student, initially I thought that each student can work on the same linear equation and find a point for that equation. So that way I thought that the students could actually engage with each other. And as I walked around and monitored the class, I can, pay attention to their discussion that they were having and answer any questions that they had. So they will continuously be engaged if they worked on the same equation. But in the future, I can give each person in the group a separate equation, and then after they work that equation, they can have their group members check their work. So then the engagement would be toward the end of the group work. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. Any questions or comments?
Hey, Venus. Dr. B here. Let me tell you that I am very, very impressed that you took to do the MIT App Inventor and that you found that app that you can actually use and modify to fit your needs and the needs of your students. So I think it works very well for you. I think that you're going to enjoy it, and hopefully, the students will too whenever you get a chance to put it into practice next year.
Yes, I can't wait. I'm excited to use it. I think it will help the students tremendously.
So did you find it difficult to apply it, like to find the way to make it work for you?
It was not difficult at all. All I did was I just practiced it myself. You can see that the first point, like the red point, the red buttons control that red point, and the yellow point, the yellow buttons controlled it. So it was very easy to work with. I think the students will find it easy.
So let me tell everybody that this was, even though we showed them how to work with the MIT App Inventor and this is an app that we didn't cover. Like the CIS faculty didn't cover. So Venus took it upon herself to go in, to look at it and to make it work for her. So again, like I said before, the level of confidence that you guys have gained through the whole year is amazing. And we are so, so proud of you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Evans did his residency in LaSalle Parish, and he was at Junior High for his residency with Miss Chantel Toll as his mentor teacher. So he's pursuing his certification in math. And so go ahead and get started. Mr. Evans, the floor is yours.
All right. All right, can everybody see my white screen?
Mm-hmm.
All right, there we go. All right. Well, to get started, I just want to say that it's been a blessing to be a part of the CLIP residency. I feel very prepared to be in my own classroom next school year. Of course, I have a lot to learn still. But I feel very confident and prepared to go into my own classroom. And it's because of this program, like others have said already. And my name is Edgar Evans, Jr., and I go by Lewis. And I am from LaSalle Parish and Gina. And my host school, like Ms. Jennifer said, was Gina Junior High. Great school, great administration, great teachers. They welcomed me very well. And I felt like I was a part of them. And I'm a mentor teacher. And actually, they did offer me a position, an 8th grade math position there, for next year. My mentor teacher was Ms. Chantel Towell, as been stated. And partly, a big part of why I feel confident about being in my own classroom next year is because of her. She was a great mentor, a veteran teacher of over 20 years. Just learned a lot from her on how to communicate with students, the presence, being before students, teaching strategies, just the ins and out of being a teacher. Just learned a lot from Ms. Towell, and I'm very appreciative of my time within her classroom. We taught seventh grade math. And the agenda for this presentation, now of course I did not get to actually teach this lesson because the schools closed. I was planning on teaching this lesson after the LEAP test, but I did know what I was wanting to use, what technologies I was wanting to utilize. That's what I was gonna focus on first, is technologies utilized, which are Kahoot. That is a resource that I learned from the CLIP program from NSU, and then iExcel. That is a resource that I learned from through LaSalle District, and then Chromebooks. That's a resource that I learned from the CLIP program through NSU. So just going to give a brief overview of those here in a moment, and then we'll look at the classroom information, all the things that I need to know about the class to prepare my lesson. And then the third, preparation of the lesson itself, the prior knowledge, the standards, purpose of technology, the contributing factors. Also, then the fourth, the lesson, the objective, expectations, classroom management, assessment, and overview. And then we'll dig a little deeper into the technology itself within the overview. So that's what we're going to do. So the technology utilized, the first one is Kahoot, just a brief overview. Like I said, we learned this from the CLIP program through NSU. I believe we learned this one, one of the first things we learned back in the fall. And as soon as we learned about it, I brought it into the classroom, and the students just fell in love with it. They would we always meet the students out in the hallway, and they would always beg to do Kahoot to the point where it was almost irritating at times. But they fell in love with it. It's a game-based learning platform that makes it easy to create, share, and play fun learning games of trivia, quizzes in minutes. It's a great way to review, to see which students are still struggling with things. Great way to teach some problems that need to be taught as well. So a good, fun way to review. The next one is iExcel. Our district gives this resource to us. It's for math, language arts, science, social studies, Spanish. It's a personalized learning tool, internet-based software. I love this resource. They can have it on their phones at home. We can give them bonus points if they use it. We can see what time they looked at it. All kind of analytics there for it. It's a great resource. And then third, of course, is Chromebooks. Most of you know what Chromebooks are, of course. They're mini laptops, basically, web-based devices, access the internet, apps, extensions. They're a product of Google. Many districts are using them today because they're affordable. And also for the simple fact that they have keyboards, real keyboards on them, because the students still need to practice how to type to be ready for college and career. So those are the three technologies utilized in this lesson. Let's look at the classroom information that I need to consider when planning. We have a shorter length of classes compared to others in the program, 55 minutes. Now the layout of the class, all the math and ELA classes at Gina Junior High have computers or Chromebooks. Ms. Towell's class had computers, so we had 24 computers aligned along the wall. So that was the layout. Now for this, I was actually going to bring in a classroom set of Chromebooks for this lesson, and I was going to bring them in the day before and actually practice with the students on the procedures of of using the Chromebooks, getting them, putting them back, those types of things. And also I knew there was maybe a chance that I would be teaching the 8th grade class next year that actually has a classroom set of Chromebooks. So I wanted to get some practice on teaching those procedures and seeing how they would work within the classroom. So number of students, the whole 7th grade class, we had 107. And then for this particular class, for this lesson, 23 students total. Cultural factors to consider, we had 10 females, 13 males, 1 Native American, 1 African American, 22 Caucasian. Academic performance, majority of them were below grade level in this class because it was basically our pride class, the class that the lower level students were in, those who were struggling in math at the time. And actually, Ms. Towell was very gracious to me by basically letting me teach that class the majority of the year since the fall. So I felt very comfortable within that class. So that's why I was going to teach this lesson in that class. And one more thing with cultural factors is the accommodations. Now that looks like a good list there, but it's actually for 1 student. So in preparation for the lesson, that did make it a little easier considering it was only 1 student. All right, so preparation of the lesson. The state standards that I was going to review on was apply properties of operations as strategies to add, subtract, factor, and expand linear expressions with rational coefficients to include multiple grouping symbols. The national standards, each and every student should use the associative and cumulative properties of addition and multiplication and distributive property of multiplication over addition to simplify computation with integers, fractions, and decimals. And also needed to consider the prior knowledge of the students. They should have learned in the 6th grade how to apply the properties of operations to generate equivalent expressions and also how to identify when 2 expressions are equivalent. And also needed to consider that I was going to do this after the LEAP test. So of course this entire lesson was prior knowledge because we had already taught it previously in the year. All right, overall purpose of using the technology in this lesson. I was not necessarily going to use it within the instruction portion, but was planning on using it after that. So basically enrichment, more practice, letting the students who wasn't quite getting it to get more practice, me getting one-on-one time with them, the students who were getting it, getting them more practice so they can master it. So enrichment. And then the top 3 contributing factors I feel need to happen to make this lesson successful is 1. I believe it was Blake who has already quoted Harry Wong. I'm going to quote him again. Procedures, procedures, procedures. Having procedures already established is key to making a lesson successful. Procedures on getting the Chromebooks, procedures with iExcel, Kahoot, all those things within the lesson. 2, utilize engaging instructional strategies. That is key for a lesson to be successful. And 3, as others have said already, the technology needs to work. We need to test it before the class starts. We as teachers sometimes get so busy preparing and preparing other things that sometimes we forget to test the actual technology. All right, so the lesson, real quick, the objective that I'll have on the board, and I'll state at the beginning of the class, is I will review how to write equivalent expressions by combining like terms. And I'll state this before the class so that the students will know what they are expected to do, and that is to write equivalent expressions in standard form by applying the properties, and that they will demonstrate their achievement of this by mastering iExcel, mastering Kahoot, and then completing an exit ticket at the end of the class that I will then assess. Classroom management techniques. As soon as they walk into the class, a POD, bell ringer, get them busy learning, get them busy working. That helps with classroom management. Also, engaging instructional strategies during the lesson, keeping them engaged and motivated to learn will help with keeping misbehavior down. I like to use popsicle sticks, learned that from Miss Towell. It helps the students, many of them stay engaged because there's a chance that they may be called on to answer a question. Again, procedures with Chromebooks, iExcel, Kahoot, and other things within the lesson. It just keeps organization. The students know what you expect of them. And then next, assessment to ensure the learning objective is achieved. Of course, formative assessment throughout the lesson. iExcel and Kahoot analysis. We'll look at that in a moment. And then proper completion of the exit ticket. Let's look at a quick overview of how the lesson would go. A POD, we would have a quick POD, just some math problems that they would need to review, to work the review, some adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing of negative and positive integers. And then the math lesson itself, Eureka lesson. This is where the instructional strategies, various instructional strategies would come into play. Kagan strategies, getting the students to work together, to talk to one another, and to review together. And then iExcel. This is where they're going to be working on their own. This is personalized learning with the Chromebooks, me also walking around helping them one-on-one. So this is how iExcel works. I want to show it to you. So this is iExcel, how it looks, 7th grade, multiply using the distributive property. Gives you instructions there, simplify. So 2 times 4u plus 3. So 2 times 4u will be 8u. And then 2 times 3, so it'll be plus 6. Get it right. So over here on the side, the green shows you how many answers you've done, questions you've done. The blue shows you, I can't really see my thing here. Okay. The red tells you your score. All right, let's do another one. It's 14S plus 4. All right, got it right. All right, my score went up. 23. Now let's show you what happened when they get it wrong. Let's say they forget to put the variable in, as they do a lot. So let's do 2 plus, and let's just put 12. What? I got that right. Let's see. Oh, I forgot the variable. Okay. Well, see, my score went down. Well, I got to get that back up. I got to get 100 here. Let's see. See, 30. I'm going to put the variable this time plus 10. All right, I got it right that time. My score went up. All right. Now on the bottom here, the students don't have that, but the teachers do. They can jump a level. Now it adds negative numbers there, negative integers. So that'd be negative 14. Negative times a negative is a positive, so plus. All right. 2W, submit. All right, so we got it right. Our score went up. Jump another level just to show you how it looks. It's a little harder. Jump another level. We get to 90, it gets harder. It goes to decimals and fractions. The whole goal is to get to 100 to master this skill, to get a badge. That's what iExcel looks like, and I'll be walking around, like I said. Students will be raising their hands. I'll be having one-on-one practice with them. At my desk, computer will have the analytics, the live classroom there. Each student will be listed here. I could even have, at times when they're on different skills, have them grouped like that. So that's how it works. On that live classroom part, it shows their last 5 questions that they've answered. When they've answered it right, there's a green bar. When they answered it wrong, there's a red one. And when they have 3 red bars, it doesn't matter if it's 3 in order or not. If they have 3 there out of the 5, their whole square turns red, which tells me that they need help. So it's a very useful tool. And like I said earlier, they can go home and practice with it. Also, like I said, it's personalized learning. So there's some who go faster than others. After the class, I can go back and look and see who didn't do as much as the others. So I know that they need more practice, more help than the others do. So after I excel, we'll then go to Kahoot, the quiz game. I'll show you how that works. This is actually a preview. And so this is a preview of the game generating equivalent expressions. So just imagine this is a classroom. That's a smart board in the room. And so these are desks with students. This is what the students will see. Now they have a cell phone there, but just imagine the students holding a Chromebook. Now they won't actually see that at first because I'll have to actually click one of these buttons first, the classic or the team mode. And we're going to hit classic where everyone's against everyone else. All right, so we'll see join at www.kahoot.com. So after I excel, the students will do that. They'll type in that address. This will then pop up and they'll click in the pin, the game pin, 59999920. And then they'll put in a nickname, and I'll put my nickname from college, Sweet Lou. There we go. All the names will pop in there on the bottom, shows how many players there. And then we'll hit next there. So there's 11 questions. Of course, we won't do all 11. Let's do number 1. Which expressions are equivalent? Starting off easy. You see we have 4 different colors. There's a timer there. Let's see the red one. See that one is equivalent. The blue one is not. The green one is not. The yellow, gold one, whatever you want to call it, is not. That's what the whole class is seeing. This is what the students are seeing on the Chromebooks. They just see the color and shapes. The red one's right, so that's what you should click. You get it right, and it shows how many got it right. It'll also show how many got it wrong. All right, so you click next, and it shows the score. This is where the students get excited. They love competition. Let's click next. Let's do number 2 real quick. 5x plus 6y is equivalent to which expression? If it goes too fast, it does show it on top. All right, so red, nope. Blue, nope. Green, nope. Gold, yes. All right, so I'm a student. I say the gold one there is correct, and I'm right. All right, so this would be a good one, though, if you have a lot of students get it wrong. You could work all of these on the board, use different teaching strategies. You could even push that button there to show it on the screen. So all the scores show up there, show who's in the lead, great competition. Let's show one where a student gets it wrong, okay? So maybe they get confused and they believe 3x. They forget that that's multiplying, where they believe you could just subtract that x. So they hit yes there for that it's equivalent. So they get it wrong. All right. So that is how Kahoot works. It's a great review tool, great teaching tool, where if you have a lot of students missing a particular problem there, you could take time, just stop the game and work there and focus on misconceptions. And the students are engaged, fully engaged, and they're not just sitting there looking down at a technology. They're looking at the board, all of them looking at it, working together. And then after Kahoot, we will then do the exit ticket, and those who finish the exit ticket before the bell rings could then go back to iExcel and get even more practice. So that's how this lesson would work. I wish I had pictures and even maybe videos of the students having fun with these technologies and showing how they're engaged and how it's enhancing their the teaching and the learning. And I wish I had some data to show you that it does enhance the teaching and learning. I don't have those things. I wish I did. But I have used all of these multiple times within the classroom. So I can say from my experience that these technologies that I utilize in this lesson, they do enhance and are very useful tools for teaching and learning within the classroom. Thank you. Any questions?
on the iExcel, is that showing you live data when the
Yes, it is.
students? Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. There were times where I even had it on the screen. At first, I wasn't wanting to do that. But then there was a point where the students wanted me to do that. I wasn't wanting to do that because I was afraid of some students getting embarrassed or something like that. But they're all, yeah, show it up there. So I did that, and the students were not wanting their name to be read. So they were working hard and engaged and not wanting to mess up. So.
Hey, Dr. B here. I was just going to tell you that my students love Kahoot. So it's not with the elementary, middle, high school. My students, whenever I teach in the classroom, they love Kahoot, and they love the podium. They love the points. I use it to review classroom topics in the morning, like whenever they come in. So it's one of those things that no matter what age you are, they're going to absolutely love it. Now, let me tell you one thing to be careful. The way they put their names on it, right? Yes. Because they can put any name they want. Some of them became a little bit too creative. So of course, they're college students, right? So I had to tell them, you keep it simple, keep it clean, and keep it nice. Yeah. But I do love Kahoot, and iExcel is a wonderful resource, and I'm glad that you were able to put all those resources with the Chromebooks in your head. So next year, when you start teaching, you can just put them up directly in the classroom. I think that you have a great plan, and it's going to work out.
Yeah. Actually, we had one nickname that was borderline, and after that, there was no nicknames allowed.
That's right. That's what you got to do. Yeah. Make sure you tell them how it needs to be. Very good. Awesome. Very good.